Hey, gorgeous. Welcome to the Ready to Bloom podcast, which features interviews with inspiring women entrepreneurs from around the world. Thank you so much for joining us today. Now, without further ado, I'll hand you over to your host, Holly Wharton.
Hello and welcome to the Ready to Bloom podcast, episode 124. This is your host, Holly Wharton. I'm here with today's special guest, Beth Grant. Beth is a marketing strategist, writer, and the creator of numerous empowerment tools. Her Archetype Alignment Grid has been called the Holy Grail of Marketing, and it is revolutionizing the way entrepreneurs and coaches worldwide approach marketing and sales. She is also the author of the prolific ebook, The 4 States of Being. Welcome, Beth.
Thank you. Thank you, Holly, and thanks for inviting me.
I'm really excited to have you on the show. I've only recently discovered you. I was working with Lisa Wechtenhiser.
Oh.
And she introduced me to your work, and I went to your website and went, oh my God, this is amazing. So you're a new discovery for me, but I absolutely love what you do, and I just had to share it with my audience. So I'm so happy to have you today.
Thank you. You know, Lisa is actually a certified ambassador of my work. She loved my work so much, she actually wanted to use it with her clients. Mm-hmm. So I trained, she's one of a group of people that I trained in actually using this with their clients to help them apply it, what we're going to talk about today. So, yeah.
Yeah, love it, love it, love it. And that's how I discovered it through my work with her. So before we get started, why don't you start by telling us a little about your background and your business journey and how you got to where you are today?
Well, I mean, that is a big question. Mm-hmm. I don't know that we have time for me to answer that whole question and still leave people with something valuable at the end. You know, I would say like the story arc of my business journey was I was a corporate misfit, and like most entrepreneurs, I made a really good living in the corporate world, but I was really miserable. Mm-hmm. I felt really confined in that environment. And so I really wanted to be a writer, and that's what I ended up doing when I left the corporate world. My first attempt, I fell flat on my face, and then I actually created a successful business as a writer my second try. And then in the middle of all that, I had a spiritual awakening. So I went from being a miserable person, or a person who saw life through the lens of what wasn't working and looked for outside of myself what could bring me happiness, to realizing in, a flash of insight that happiness comes from within, and, that I am not my thoughts, and I am not my mind, that I actually have a spirit that's, that I can use to observe that. Right. Mm-hmm. So that took me on a journey where people were coming to me wanting me to help them achieve the ease and happiness in their life that they had seen happen to me. And that is how I originally started really being an entrepreneur. Although as a writer, I was an entrepreneur. I never had, I didn't have to do any of the marketing that comes with being a different kind of entrepreneur. So mm-hmm. I was a spiritual mentor mm-hmm. and struggling to apply the marketing tools that I was seeing in the business world, and that all of the gurus were saying works, and their formulas and all these things, and I was using them, and I was generating income, but there was what I would call a really big misalignment going on mm-hmm. and a disharmony in my business. So I was making money, but I was feeling bad about how I was getting the money. Mm-hmm. That was one thing. And often the marketing that I was learning, and especially how to do the messaging part of my business, was attracting the wrong clients. So I would be working with people, but they weren't really totally aligned with what I could do for people and the impact that I could have in the world. So I had that, kind of like an overarching question or a question that kept plaguing me as I was going, bumping along, wondering why this wasn't working quite as well as it should. But, I saw people applying these marketing tools, and they, assuming that the testimonials are actually true, they were making millions of dollars, in a similar spiritually driven business that I had. And then I looked around at other people. I mean, I was one of the more successful people in my peer group, and I had other people that were just scraping by. And I looked and I was like, and they are using these same tools, and they're making nothing, literally nothing. And I was like, what is going on? Like, what is the answer here? There's got to be a way that people can make a living doing what I'm doing as well as that other person. So why, how do we do that? How do we do that? And, I really do a lot of consciousness work. So I spend, I'm in a high awareness a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. When you're in a higher consciousness, you have an awareness of things that you don't have in a lower consciousness. So one night I was just watching a movie, sitting on the couch, and I had the answer come into my awareness. And I knew in that moment what was going on. And I knew why some people are making millions of dollars and other people are making nothing, who are probably, a lot of the times, their work is actually more robust, and the work they do is more transformational. So I stayed up all night writing down what had come into my awareness. I call it a divinely creative experience. It was not from my brain. It was from somewhere beyond my brain.
Like a download that you received.
Kind of like a download. And it was a big one though. It was the kind like your computer, the thing keeps spinning, because it was all night. So, and anyway, I ended up I found the actual original notes from it the other day, and I was like, wow, this is so interesting. It was just like scribbles everywhere, pages of scribbles. And then I started to make it into this kind of grid, this matrix, and then I was like, oh, all the people were popping in my mind about where they were on this matrix, and all these 7-figure earners, and I just saw it all. And so that's what I call the Archetype Alignment Grid. And that's how it came into my awareness. And I started applying the insights that I had that night immediately. And I immediately monetized my business beyond anything I'd ever done before, working less hours. I mean, there was such an ease and flow and grace that had come into my business immediately. And because what it really did is it showed me who I am as a marketer in a natural way. And then I just aligned with that. And boom, everything changed. And then, I brought this work. I just really stopped doing the spiritual work I was doing and focused on this. And immediately it just hit a note with people. I mean, instantly hit a note with people. I went from in a completely smooth transition from one day I was a spiritual mentor, and the next day I was a marketing strategist, and my income was higher the next day. I mean, it was crazy how fast everything happened. And subsequently later, it actually went viral a couple of years ago. Yeah, it went viral and reached thousands and thousands of more people who needed it. I think there are hundreds of thousands or more people who still need it, and I'm still trying to reach them. But, the Archetype Alignment Grid is really about how to be yourself as a marketer, because when you align who you truly are with the choices in your business, the marketing choices, the choice in your business model, the choice of what mentor to hire or coach to hire, the choice of what team member to hire. I mean, every choice I'm making all day long, I'm using this Archetype Alignment Grid so that because it allows me to completely be myself and align all those choices with who I really am. So what it is it's a set of 12 archetypes, and there are 2 elements within your archetype, and where those 2 elements intersect is what your archetype is. So if you want, I can go through what that is really quickly.
Yeah, let's do that, because I think that will help give people an idea. I mean, when I heard about your Archetype Alignment Grid, it just completely changed my entire perspective. It was like I finally had words to describe who I am. And so it's just so powerful. So yes, please just go through it so everyone has an idea of what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I will just preface this by saying this is not about in any way putting you in a box. I might talk about the boxes on the grid, but it's not about putting you in a box. It's actually about helping you be more expansive because you're aligning with who you are. Yes. It's totally about being more expansive, not creating a label for you. So I just want to say that. Yeah, but what this is 12 boxes is in this grid, and it's 4 columns and 3 rows. So if you think of it, it's like one more column than a tic-tac-toe game, right? You still have to add one on the end, but it's 4 columns and 3 rows. And if you just quickly sketch one out or think of it in your mind as I'm talking about it, you will have, I can get you a copy of it at the end if you want. But
Right.
so the columns are what I call your natural style. And so what that means is it's your natural style of providing your solutions in the world, to your clients. And there are 4 styles, and some people are more than one archetype. I just want to mention that. Most people are, but this is for the 4 styles, people tend to really see a differentiation here. So in the left-hand column, the first column is called Guru Star. And a Guru Star has what I call an I know best approach. So their natural style of providing solutions is basically like this. Buyer, you have this problem or desire for something more, and I know exactly how you can get that. And if you just do what I tell you to do, you're going to be able to get that result. Or if you just follow my steps that I'm going to outline for you, exactly how I outline them, you're going to be able to get the result that you want. And that's their natural way of approaching solving their clients' needs, right? So the second column is called Truth Guide. And a Truth Guide is somebody who says, buyer, you have this problem or desire for something more, and I'm going to use my expertise and I'm going to guide you in discovering, and I'm going to empower you, to make the discovery or get the clarity or make the choice that's right for you. Okay, so if you're a coach and you're listening, which of those 2 do you think you fall into? Well, hello, coaches. You're all truth guides.
Yep.
If you are seeing someone in the market who's telling you what to do, and they may have the title coach behind their name, but they're not really a coach.
Yep. They're a mentor.
Know that. Yeah. They're a mentor. Usually they're a consultant.
Yeah.
Is what I would really call them. So because in coaching 101, fundamental coaching principles is that we do not ever think that we know what is best for someone else. And if we do feel that on the inside, we never ever share that with the client, because that's just not appropriate, right? It's just not empowering people. Yeah. So the third column is called Connector. And a connector has a they know best approach. So connector is going, buyer, you have this desire for or need for something more or this problem, and I know somebody who can probably solve this for you, so I want to connect you with that person. Right now, you're acting as a connector. You're bringing your audience somebody else's wisdom, right? Yeah. And you're connecting that. And one thing I would say it's common in people who are pure connectors. Most people are not pure connectors. Connector is one of their columns, but there are people who are pure connectors. A pure connector actually feels really expansive and joyful selling other people's stuff and shrinks when they go to sell their own stuff. They just feel so much more comfortable connecting people than they do stepping into the role of the expert or leader and having to sell their own services. So there are a lot of people who struggle with sales and marketing who the real reason that they struggle is because they're really connectors. And if they take note of that, they'll be like, and you can create an entire business as a connector. You don't ever have to be anything other than that if that's really what brings you joy. Most people, yeah. Oh, for sure. There are lots of people who do that. Okay, so the fourth column is called supporter. And a supporter is somebody who gets their joy from serving or who their business is a pillar in somebody else's business. So like my CPA, Jody, her business is a supporter business. When I was a copywriter and a book editor, when I was actively doing that, I was a supporter. And the way you can really differentiate, because a supporter can have the traits of a truth guide or a guru star for sure. They can have an I know best approach. They can have a you know best approach. But ultimately, a supporter is working on the client's project. That's how you can differentiate. Okay? And I just want to also mention that all 12 boxes on this grid have the same income potential. No one box is like the money box and then the rest are not. Everybody can make the same amount of money. All right. So those are the 4 natural styles. And the rows on the grid are what I call your personal persuasion power. And that just means it's your natural influence. It's the way that you influence people in every area of your life. It's the way you influence your family, your child's teacher, the clerk at a store when you are buying something, whatever the case might be. Your personal persuasion power is just your natural influence. And the personal persuasion power is what drives the money in your business. Okay, so the top row is called charismatic. We all know what charismatic means. It's a confidence, charm, a magnetism that you have as a marketer. And a charismatic person has the confidence usually that people can feel. And so that's what a charismatic personal persuasion power really is. We all know we've all bought from charismatic people, So sometimes going, wait a minute, what did I just do? So anyway, the second row is called conversational. And a conversational personal persuasion power is when your essence comes through your voice, or when the act of hearing you talk or having a conversation with you is what causes the buyer to move forward in your marketing. And I'll come back to that in a second. I want to make a little bit of a notation about conversational people. Okay. The bottom row is called compelling creative. And this is where you have a talent, a skill, a concept, content, or idea that is so cutting edge and original and fresh and cream of the crop that on its own, it will cause the buyer to move forward and purchase from you. Or it'll cause the buyer to move forward through your marketing, even if you have another personal persuasion power that's also involved in your marketing pipeline. So I always say, if you're really a truly compelling creative personal persuasion power, you could have the personality of a houseplant and your voice could sound like nails on a chalkboard and people would still want to buy from you. Okay, so that's how to tell it apart.
Yeah.
Just because you have content in your business does not make you a compelling creative. Just because if you're an artist, very few artists are actually compelling creatives. They may be very successful, but it's not like their talent. It's not their original talent wowing people. It's actually some other element within them that's driving the sale. Okay, so it's very important to understand that. So I want to go back really quickly to the conversational row, because where these two things intersect, your natural style and your personal persuasion power, is what I call your marketing archetype, right? And I can tell you from a very large survey I did that most purpose-driven entrepreneurs and coaches are over 70%, their primary box is the conversation truth guide box. And the thing about it is that almost all the marketing that's taught out there is taught by people in the upper left-hand box of the grid, charismatic guru stars. So if you are a charismatic guru star, like I saw John Asseroff speak once, and he had learned a technique for a certain kind of marketing from a charismatic guru star. And he was like, thought this person walked on water. I mean, because here's a guy who was making millions of dollars per year, but he was frustrated because he knew he could be making more. His conversions were not actually as high as he wanted them to be. And he just needed to know that tweak. Like, he just needed the skill that this person taught. And he was like, oh my gosh, now I get it. And he went out and boom, his sales just exploded. Right. So I watched this happen at somewhere. And, if you're in that archetype and you learn that approach to holding sales conversations, or to speaking from the stage, or to doing online marketing that's content driven, and that's all you need, right? You're going to have this really amazing result. But if you are in a different archetype and you try to use these marketing methods, your buyer is going to run the other way as fast as they can. They're either going to get angry with you. That's when you get like a nasty email in your inbox and you're like, what did I do? This person is so mean to me. Like, I'm a nice person trying to help you, Or like if you're at a speaking engagement and you use this, what will happen is the audience will just sit and stare at you when you make your offer. They'll just sit and stare. And there's this awkward silence that will come over the room, and everybody in the room feels uncomfortable. Or your audience will feel pity for you. That's what happens sometimes. And as a speaker, the last thing you want is for your audience to feel sorry for you. Yeah. or they'll just leave, So this is when you send out a misaligned email, for instance, to your email list. Like you use messaging that's super hypey and guru starish, and you send it out and you're a truth guide, and you get a huge amount of unsubscribes, or your open rate drops. That happened to a colleague of mine. Like she went through and did a misaligned launch. Like she used a charismatic guru star launch style, and she was launching this program, and it made her audience, it turned them off so much that her open rate dropped by half and never recovered. I mean, that's, thousands of people that you're losing now. And it takes a lot to get their attention again after what they view that as is a breach of trust. Mm-hmm. So because people, there are different reasons why people buy from each of these archetypes. So using the conversation truth guide as an example, since so many people listening are going to fall into that, that's at the corner of trust and trust. Mm-hmm. People buy from truth guides. One of the reasons they buy from them is because they trust them, and people buy from conversational people because they trust them. So anything you do in your marketing that is going to be perceived as a breach of trust is going to have very big ramifications for you. So, the goal is to have a foundation for choice, right? So you want to have a way that you can say, does this honor my archetype or not, right? And each of these boxes has what I call a marketing foundation, and that's how I make my choices, is that I say, does this honor my marketing foundation or not? And if it doesn't, it may have worked really well for someone else, and it may look good on paper, really good on paper, but if it's not honoring who I truly am, it's a no. Mm-hmm. So that's what you really are to me, to be yourself in your business is where you get ease, flow, grace, and joy from your marketing. It's where you don't, and I will say this, the approach that I use to marketing, one of the first things I tell people is just stop selling. Just please stop selling. It's because the vast majority of people I work with are in the truth guide, connector, or supporter columns. And really, selling is not even in alignment with you as a marketer. Selling, convincing someone to buy from you creates an immediate disharmony. If they're really your ideal client, you don't need to convince them to market or to buy from you. Your marketing should have shown them already why buying from you would be beneficial to them, and they should be asking you, "Can I buy from you?" Not you. That's why or like the whole traditional sales jargon and training, traditional sales training, which is more like a masculine energy training. That's all about like, I can teach you how to overcome objections. I'm like, objections? I don't even know what that is, because when I'm marketing to someone, if they have an objection, are they really my ideal client? That's how I look at it. Are they? I don't think so. I don't think so. I never, when I'm on the phone with a potential client, I don't ever have an objection to work with me. They're because the way I do my marketing is so aligned with who I am that, and I've done, I've designed an effective and ethical marketing pipeline that by the time we get to that end phase of that process, all we're doing at that point is figuring out whether this is really the right fit for them and they're ready to go. Are they ready to go, or are they not ready to go? It's not a matter of having to convince them, So I find that every time I see this from a sales coach, I'm like, I would never want to hire you. You're not in my world. Like, go be in the world where where people have like disharmonious relationships with their clients. Cause I don't want you. I don't want that in my business. Go away,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, Beth, how can people then align their marketing with who they are?
Yeah.
What's the best way to go about that?
Well, you need a foundation for making choices. Okay. And the biggest thing is, which, I kind of hit on earlier, is you really you want to understand, how does it feel when I'm in alignment, right? And I think we all know how that feels, because you feel relaxed, content. You feel expansive instead of like you're shrinking. That's a big way to tell, is your body will actually tell you when you're aligned, and it will tell you when you're making a misaligned choice. So and I know that everybody listening has made a misaligned choice. And if you think back to when you actually made that choice before you went forward with that thing that didn't work later, that now well, that wasn't working. You know that your body told you. So you have to be in tune with your body's signals or your intuitive senses enough to be able to do that. And then that's only half of it, because then you have to honor that, right? Even though you need the money and you don't know how it will come, you have to be willing to not make the choice that doesn't feel right to you, because there's another possibility out there that you just have to open up to that would allow you to feel expansive and would allow you to align with the right client. So there's a whole, we don't probably have time to get into it today, but there's a whole misalignment loop that people get into. And what I really want you to do is to create an alignment loop, which means you're setting the right intention for you. Then you're making an aligned choice, and that's creating a great result. And that great result that has an impact on you, and it puts you into a point of view of possibilities. And from there, you set another intention. And that's really what an alignment loop looks like. I mean, from a day-to-day, what does that look like to have aligned marketing? You design marketing pipelines that are archetype driven, that are alignment driven. And that's how I do it with my clients, and how my certified ambassadors do it. I teach them what that means. So, but even if you're looking at your business model or your messaging, or whether to say yes to a speaking engagement, I mean, all of those decisions, you want to always make sure that you're just honoring who you really are. And will this allow me to feel expansive in however I want to feel in my business? So will it really allow me to be myself? That's the main thing you want to honor, is, will this allow me to be myself?
I absolutely love that, because I think so many of us get sucked into that trap of following the guru stars because they're so confident and personality is so big that it's so easy to just think, oh, well, they know best, I'll just go with that, rather than thinking about, is this really right for me or not? And is it aligned?
Well, this actually has to do with aligning with the marketing foundation, because there are 12 different marketing foundations. And for instance, a charismatic guru star, they have a marketing foundation that aligns with what you just talked about, because their marketing foundation everybody's has 3 elements. It's why people buy from you. It's what you are really selling, and it's what people really want from you when they purchase. So like a charismatic guru star, why people buy from them is because they worship them or admire them. What they are really selling is a promise. You'll see promise-driven marketing everywhere in charismatic guru star world. It's blatant and implied promises. And then what people really want from them when they purchase is for someone to tell them what to do.
Yes.
So that's why when you were just saying, the person, would look at the guru star and say, you seem to know best. That's a person who wants someone to tell them what to do, right? That's where they are in their process. And when people purchase from truth guides, it's totally different. They want to be empowered. So even what a truth guide offers can be misaligned and attract the wrong people, because they can be offering a system or a blueprint, right? Because they think they're supposed to do that. People want to buy systems. No, the ego wants to buy a system. The higher self that you're marketing to doesn't want a system. They want to have a discovery or be empowered. So even how you package up your wisdom is completely different. When you're looking at generating passive income and leveraged income, it's totally different for a truth guide than a guru star.
Okay, so for the conversational truth guide, since as you said, probably 70% of the people listening belong to this archetype, what would be the answers to those 3 questions for them? So why do people buy from them? What are they really selling? And what do people really want from them?
Well, why people buy from them is because they trust them. And what they are really selling is the opportunity for a discovery or a deeper connection, or to be empowered. And what people are really wanting from them is to be empowered, not to be told what to do.
Yes. Okay. That makes sense.
Yes.
I love that. That makes so much sense.
That's why understanding, most people are more than one archetype also, but understanding the marketing foundation of your archetype is paramount to making the right decisions.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. It's been so enlightening. I absolutely love it. And I love this archetype process. So if people go to your website, they can actually find a webinar that you've done recently on the misalignment loop, correct? You have
that
a video
I can
up there.
give you. Yeah, I'd have to give you a special URL for that.
All right.
Yeah, what I can give you right now is a URL where people can find their archetype, which is probably what they would want to do first. And that is budurl.com /getmykit. So there's no www, and it's bud like flower bud. It's budurl.com /getmykit. And what you'll get is the traits of all 12 archetypes, so you can find where you fit in. And then you'll also get my book, The 4 States of Being, which is about the internal alignment part. So which is also equally important, is the internal alignment and understanding your state of being and how that creates your external results.
Excellent. Yeah. Excellent. And how can people work with you once they've figured out what their archetype is and they want to dig a little bit further? What are the options there?
Well, I would just encourage you to go to my website, and there you can read about whether working with me one-on-one, or if you serve entrepreneurs, most people really prefer to get certified because you can work with me one-on-one that way, but you can also be trained in how to use this with your clients and how to earn money from sharing this in the world. And those are two options, and they're both very clearly outlined on my website.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Where can people find you online?
My website is truthandconsciousness.com. Truthandconsciousness.com.
Excellent. And do you spend any time on social media?
Well, yeah, I spend most of my social media time on Facebook.
Great.
So people could look for me there.
Excellent. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I think this is such important information because it really helps entrepreneurs to really get to know who they are and how to express this to people.
Oh, well, thank you for allowing me to get this message into the world to more people who need it.
You're welcome. And thank you for listening. And remember to visit readytobloom.com /124 for the show notes on this episode. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to the Ready to Bloom podcast with your host, Holly Wharton. You can find more information about today's guests, including links for topics that were discussed at readytobloom.com. That's ready, 2, bloom.com. And if you enjoyed this episode, please remember to head over to iTunes and leave us a quick review of this podcast. Thank you so much.